Nobody in Meridian, Mississippi grew up expecting Arthur Lowe to end up in a bar. That was never the plan. The plan had been written long before Arthur had any say in it, written in the hand of Reverend Thomas Lowe, pastor of Grace Gospel Church for 31 years, a man who believed that music was the closest thing to God that human hands could manufacture, and who had placed those beliefs into the bones of his only son with considerable force of will. Arthur could play before he could read, not a metaphor. A documented fact that his mother repeated at every family gathering until the day she died, that Arthur had found the church piano at age 3, climbed onto the bench by himself, and pressed the keys in a sequence that wasn't noise. Reverend Lowe had stood in the door for a full minute before saying anything. Then he said quietly, "The way a man says something he has been expecting, that boy was sent here for a reason." The reason, as far as the Reverend was concerned, was the church. Arthur would lead the choir. Arthur would play the gospel. Arthur would carry the music of Grace Gospel Church into the next generation. This was not a conversation, it was an announcement made to the congregation when Arthur was 5 years old, the boy sitting in the front pew with his feet not yet reaching the floor. He did not hate it. Arthur Lowe was not a boy who suffered through his father's church and dreamed of escaping. He loved the music. He loved the weight of the gospel under his hands, the history of it, the way a room full of people could be moved by a chord change in a way nothing else could explain. He was his father's son in every way that mattered musically. The difference between them was not the love of music. The difference was what they believed music was for. Reverend Lowe believed music was for God. Arthur believed music was for the truth. At 18 years old, those two things turned out not to be the same. He left on a Sunday. Not dramatically, not in the middle of a sermon, not with a fight the congregation would talk about for years. He simply did not come back after the morning service. He had a bag already packed. He had Diane. Diane Carter was from 2 streets over. They had known each other their entire lives the way children from the same neighborhood know each other completely and without thinking about it. The thinking came later, around 16, when Arthur noticed that Diane had stopped being a fact of his landscape and had become something he thought about when she wasn't there. By 18, they were leaving together. Reverend Lowe stood on the porch and watched them go. He did not shout. He did not beg. He said one thing in the voice he used when he wanted something to stay. "Arthur, the door stays open." Arthur nodded without turning around. He drove away and did not look back, because he knew that if he did, he would see his father still standing on that porch, and he was not sure he could keep driving if he did. They drove to Memphis. They married at City Hall. They rented a room the size of a generous closet, and Arthur started playing wherever someone would have him: bars, restaurants, private events, anywhere a piano existed and someone would pay. He was very good. The gospel training had given him a technique that bar blues didn't always produce: a cleanliness in the left hand, a sense of space, an understanding of when not to play that most musicians spent years learning and some never did. Within a year, he had a regular spot at Harlow's on Beale Street. Within 2, he was the reason people came. They built something small in theirs, an apartment with a window that caught the sunset every evening at exactly the right angle. Arthur played 5 nights a week and came home at 2 in the morning, and Diane left coffee in the pot because she knew he would need it. 10 years of that. 10 years of the coffee and the sunset and the small shared world of 2 people who had driven away from everything familiar and built something out of nothing but stubbornness and proximity. On a Friday in October, Arthur Lowe sat at the piano at Harlow's, the same way he had sat there every Friday for 10 years. Same bench, same light above the stage, same smell of bourbon and old wood and the particular warmth of a room that has been full of people for a long time. He did not think about any of that. He just played. The way you do something you have done 10,000 times without thinking, without effort, with the body carrying the knowledge that the mind stopped needing to supervise years ago. The crowd moved around him the way water moves around something fixed. He was fixed. He had always been fixed. The piano was the one place in the world where Arthur Lowe knew exactly who he was.
Let's go. The night is young and the lights are low. Piano's hot and the bourbon's cold. Everybody's loose and everybody's free. Come on, baby, come dance with me. Pour me one more, bartender, pour me one more. Leave your troubles at the door. The band is tight and the groove is right. Pour me one more, baby, one more tonight. Don't matter what you got going on outside. Step inside and let the blues be your guide. Leave your worries on the bar stool there. Ain't nothing in here but good music and air. Pour me one more, bartender, pour me one more. Leave your troubles at the door. The band is tight and the groove is right. Pour me one more, baby, one more tonight. Everybody on the floor now, move your feet, feel the sound. This old piano's been waiting all week to bring this whole house down. Pour me one more, bartender, pour me one more. Leave your troubles at the door. The band is tight and the groove is right. Pour me one more, baby, one more tonight. One more time now. Come on, everybody. One more tonight. Hey!
When the last note faded, the crowd at Harlow's did what the crowd at Harlow's always did. They clapped, they whistled, someone in the back called out his name. Arthur nodded once and reached for the glass of water on top of the piano. A man at the bar, mid-50s, the kind of face that has spent a lot of evenings in rooms like this one, turned on his stool and looked at him. He said he had been coming to Harlow's for 11 years and that Arthur was the best thing that had ever happened to that piano, and that he ought to be on television. Ought to be on the American blues stage, he said. The whole country should hear what this man can do. Arthur smiled the smile he used for this particular compliment, which he had received in various forms for most of his adult life. He said he appreciated it. He said his wife had been telling him the same thing for years. The man at the bar said then maybe it was time to listen to his wife. Arthur laughed. He said maybe it was. He packed up at midnight, said good night to the bartender, and drove home through the quiet Memphis streets thinking about nothing in particular. He was not worried. He was not paying attention in the way that would have allowed him to worry. He parked outside the apartment and took the stairs and put his key in the door and pushed it open. The apartment was quiet in a way that was different from the usual quiet of a sleeping woman. Her coat was not on the hook. Her shoes were not by the door. He stood in the hallway for a moment, the body understanding something before the mind caught up. He walked to the bedroom. The closet was open, half empty, the half that had been hers. On the kitchen table there was no note. Only her phone, left behind, screen cracked, unlocked. He stood at the table and looked at it for a long time. Then he picked it up, and he read what was on it, and he sat down in the chair and did not move for 2 hours. At 4 a.m, he opened the bourbon and sat at the upright piano against the living room wall and started to play. Not anything specific. Just the piano, in the dark, with the particular freedom of a man who has nothing left to be careful about. He played until the sun came up. He played until his hands hurt. And somewhere in that long dark morning he understood something he had not understood before. Diane had said it more than once, in the way of someone who repeats a thing until they run out of patience. Arthur, you should go on one of those shows. The whole country should hear you play. He had always laughed. He had said he didn't need a stage. He had been wrong about a lot of things. He registered for the American Blues stage 2 days later. The biggest music competition in the country, nationally televised, 3 judges, who between them had more combined years in the industry than Arthur had been alive. He was not registering because he wanted to win. He was registering because Diane would see it. She watched that show. He knew that the way he knew all the small facts of a person lived with for 10 years without thinking, the way you know the furniture in a room you've stopped noticing, he had something to say. He had finally found the song, and the only stage large enough to make sure she heard it was the one he had spent 10 years refusing to stand on. The morning of the audition, Arthur Lowe woke up on the couch with his hand resting on the piano keys and an empty glass on the floor. He did not remember falling asleep. He showered. He put on dark trousers, a white shirt, a black vest he had owned for 6 years. He looked at himself in the mirror. He looked like his father. He had always looked like his father, the same broad forehead, the same set of the jaw, the same eyes people described as serious even when he was laughing. He had spent years trying not to look like his father. Standing in the bathroom at 8 in the morning with 2 nights of bad sleep behind him, he understood he had never succeeded. He found the bottle again at 10. He told himself it was for the nerves, which was not entirely a lie. The truth was that he was not sure he could walk into that building sober. Not because of the stage, he had never been afraid of a stage, because of what he was going to say on it, because once he played that song, he could not unplay it. He arrived at the American Blues stage with a slight lisp to his walk and a very clear head. That was the particular thing about Arthur Lowe and bourbon. It never clouded his thinking. It only slowed the part of him that worried. The production assistant at the door noticed immediately. She ran a rapid calculation behind her eyes and then stepped aside and let him through. He watched the 4 acts ahead of him from the wings. A woman with a voice like iron. 2 men who played together with the ease of decades. A young harmonica player who was technically perfect and emotionally unremarkable. They were all good. Arthur watched them and felt something not quite contempt, but adjacent to distance. He was not there for the same reason they were. When his name was called, the floor manager pulled him aside and asked, quietly, whether he was in a condition to perform. Arthur looked at him steadily. He said he was going to play the piano. He said he had been playing since he was 3 years old. He said the bourbon was a personal matter and his hands worked fine, and if they wanted to hear what he had come to play, they could let him walk out, and if they didn't, he would go home. The floor manager looked at him for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. The audience noticed him before the judges did. He walked out with the deliberate gait of a man managing himself, each step placed with slightly more attention than was natural. The murmur that went through the theater was not excitement. It was the specific unease of a crowd that can see something is different but cannot decide yet what different means. He sat at the piano, adjusted the bench once, placed his hands in his lap, and looked at the 3 judges. Calvin Reed was the senior judge, a face that had heard everything and been surprised by very little of it. Sandra Okafor, producer and songwriter, had an instinct for talent the music press described as frightening. Derek Cole, 38, had grown up in Memphis and knew the blues, not as a genre, but as a geography, the specific sound of a specific place that had shaped him before he had any choice. Calvin asked his name. Arthur told him where he was from, Meridian originally, Memphis for 10 years, what he did. Piano at Harlow's on Beale Street 5 nights a week for 10 years. Calvin asked carefully if Arthur was all right. The theater went quiet. Arthur said he'd had a hard week, said his wife had left, said he'd found out why. Said he had written a song and come here to play it, and if Calvin wanted to know whether he was sober, the answer was approximately. And if that was a problem, he understood, but the song was ready and his hands were ready and he'd like to play. Sandra had stopped writing. Derek leaned forward slightly. Calvin asked about the song. Arthur said it was about a marriage and a father and the distance between the two, which had turned out to be the same distance. Calvin asked if it was a blues song. Arthur said it started as one, said it ended somewhere else, said he wasn't sure there was a name for where it ended. Derek asked what key. Arthur said he'd know it when he got there. Something moved across Derek's face, the recognition of someone who has heard that answer before, from people who meant it. Calvin sat back. He said, "Play." Arthur turned to the piano. He placed his hands on the keys the way his father had taught him, not gripping, not resting, but present, in contact, aware. He breathed from the bottom, let it out slow, and then he began.
I came home to an empty house last Tuesday night. Her clothes were gone her perfume still hanging in the light. Found a name on her phone I never wanted to know. 10 years of love, and that's how you let it go. I used to sit beside my daddy every Sunday morning. He'd say, boy, the world will break you without any warning. I said, I don't need the church, I got my own way through. Now I'm on my knees, Lord, and I'm talking to you. I'm coming back home, Daddy, I'm coming back home. I've been lost so long out here, tired and alone. I traded your gospel for the blues in the night, but the blues can't save a man who lost his fight. I'm coming back home. She never said goodbye, just disappeared like smoke. Left me with a piano and a heart that broke. I played every bar in town, trying to fill this space, but you can't drink away the memory of her face. I remember you told me, son, love is a choice you make, not a feeling that you follow till your soul starts to ache. I was too young to listen, thought I knew it all. Now I'm standing at your door after the fall. I'm coming back home, Daddy, I'm coming back home. I've been lost so long out here, tired and alone. I traded your gospel for the blues in the night, but the blues can't save a man who lost his fight. I'm coming back home. Yeah, and if you're watching, this ain't about you anymore. This is about a boy who forgot where he came from. This is about a man walking back through his father's door. This is about learning what love was supposed to be. Daddy, I'm sorry, Lord have mercy on me. I'm coming back home. I'm coming back home. Coming back home.
The silence afterward lasted 9 seconds. Nobody counted, but everyone felt them pass. Derek stood first, the body moving before the mind, the response before the thought. His face, maintained with professional composure for years of doing this, was not composed now. Calvin stood immediately after, slowly, the way a man stands when his legs have decided before his mind caught up. Sandra sat very still with both hands pressed flat on the table, eyes closed. Then she stood, and when she did, she was already crying in the quiet way of someone who did not plan to and is not apologizing for it. The entire theater rose. The sound was not the sound of a competition, not the roar of a successful audition. It was something else, the sound of a room full of people who have been given something they did not know they needed, responding with the only instrument available, which is their own noise. Arthur sat at the piano and did not move. He kept his hands on the keys, feeling the warmth of them. He had played this song at 5 in the morning in an empty apartment. He had never played it for a room. Now he knew what a room did with it. He lifted one hand from the keys and held it still, not a wave. An acknowledgement. I hear you. I receive this. When the applause settled, Calvin spoke in a voice that had lost its professional register. He said that in his years in this industry he had heard a lot of piano players. Most had technique or feeling. The great ones had both. But what Arthur had done on that stage was something without a clean category, closer to what happens when a person runs out of options and the music is the last door left. He said he did not know what to do with that except say he had heard it and it would stay with him. Then he asked what Arthur was hoping to do if he advanced. Arthur was quiet long enough that the theater felt it. Then he said, I'm not. He said he had come to play that song in a place where it would be seen. The work was done. He was going home. Calvin looked at him. To Meridian? Yes. To your father? Yes. He said there was a door that had been open for 10 years that he had not walked through. It was time. Sandra reached forward and pressed the gold button before Calvin finished speaking. The single clear tone filled the theater and was swallowed immediately by the crowd. The light above the stage changed. 200 people were on their feet again. Arthur looked at the button. He looked at the judges. He was 28 years old and drunk and had a cracked phone in his pocket with messages he had read and could not unread. And somewhere Diane was watching this on a screen, or she wasn't. And the gold button was lit, and the crowd was making the sound crowds make when they want more of something. He stood from the bench, straightened his vest. He looked at Calvin Webb and said, quietly but into the microphone, Thank you. He meant it without reservation. Then he picked up his jacket and walked off the stage the way he had walked on deliberately, managing himself upright. He sat in the car for a few minutes without starting it. He did not call Diane. He had said what he needed to say in the only language he had ever fully trusted, and she had heard it or she hadn't, and either way it was done. He called his father at 11:47 at night. 4 rings, then the Reverend's voice, careful and awake. Hello, Arthur said. Dad, it's me. A pause. I know who it is. A shorter pause. Are you all right? Arthur looked through the windshield at the ordinary night going on around a place where something had just happened. He said, I'm coming home. Can I come home? The pause that followed was the length of a breath held and released. Then Reverend Thomas Lowe said, in the voice he had used from the porch 10 years ago, The door is open, son. It was always open. Arthur started the car. He pulled onto the road south toward Meridian, toward the house where he had learned to play, toward the piano in the church sanctuary where his hands had first found what they were for. The city ended and the highway began, and the night was long and flat and quiet. He drove with the radio off. For the first time in a long time, the inside of his head was quiet enough to hear himself think. And what he thought was simple and true in the way only the simplest things are true at the end of a very long night. He thought, I played it. I finally played it. And then, a mile later, with Meridian still 2 hours away, Daddy was right. It was always for the truth. And the truth and God were always the same thing. I just needed the blues to show me the way back. The Blues House aired his audition 3 weeks later. The clip of him at the piano in the moment before he played, before a single note, before anything was shared more than any clip the show had ever produced. Not the song, the moment before the song, the stillness of a man who has run out of options and found, in that running out, the only thing he ever actually needed to say. Arthur Lowe did not see any of it. He was in Meridian, sitting at the piano in the sanctuary of Grace Gospel Church in the early morning light, playing the song his father had been waiting 30 years to hear. Reverend Thomas Lowe sat in the front pew, the same pew where Arthur had sat at 5 years old with his feet not reaching the floor, and he listened and said nothing. Because there was nothing that needed to be said. The music was saying it. The music had always been saying it. His son had finally come home to hear it. If this story reached you, tell us in the comments which moment stayed with you. And subscribe to keep hearing the stories that don't ask permission but deserve to be told.